You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. I'm excited about this episode. We've been trying to do it for a while. Ivan, please go ahead and introduce today's guest.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach. I'm really excited to introduce a colleague of mine, famous Dr. Marty Becker. Dr. Marty Becker, known as America's Veterinarian, is a renowned advocate for pet health and the human-animal bond. As the founder of Fear Free, he has dedicated his career to alleviating fear, anxiety, and stress in pets, educating pet owners and professionals alike. With over 23 books sold and extensive experience as a veterinary contributor on Good Morning America, Dr. Becker continues to inspire and educate millions worldwide. Marty, welcome to the show. Thank you for finding the time.
Thank you. I know you guys are probably in awe of my tan. You talk about innovation. I really believe in innovating tanning products and alternatives for just for men hair dyeing products that look natural. Actually, if anybody could see me, I am about as white as you could possibly be. I look like I've been in Antarctica. My wife's part Native American, by the way, Cherokee. So she's got that beautiful dark skin and she's physically fit. And I've got man tits. So when we're together, we're walking together like in Hawaii on vacation. We look like 2/3 of a double stuffed Oreo.
Okay.
Well, it's good to have you here.
That's a good start. So, Marty, I'm going to potentially surprise you. I literally never was fully understanding what is Fear Free and what you create, because it's massive. I see it everywhere. I never looked into it. I'm a vet, and I'm ashamed to say that I actually never understood what it is. So can you pitch it to me like the first time you explain it to someone?
Yeah. So I'm going to preface it a little bit and then I'll give you the elevator pitch. Fear Free started in Canada, believe it or not. I was at a meeting on Victoria on Vancouver Island. A boarded veterinary behaviorist, Karen Overall, who now is over in the Maritimes of Canada. She left us here, got out of American politics, and I gave a keynote one day at that conference, the Can West Veterinary Conference. She came, sat in the front row, and the next day she gave the keynote, and I thought I better go and support her. So I always sit in the back row, caught her attention as she came in, said, Karen, I can't wait to hear your talk. And actually, I couldn't wait to leave because my wife was in town, going to go out and have a nice dinner in Victoria. And she changed my life, unexpected. Her first line was, fear is the worst thing a social species can experience and it causes permanent damage to the brain. Went on to explain behavior produces a physiologic response, so behavior is medicine. That in veterinary medicine, fear is produced by something painful or something disturbing. So you trim nails too short, painful. Now the pet sees the nail trimmer is disturbing. A syringe and a needle, blood draw, injection of syringia, long-acting antibiotics, vaccination, painful. Now they see the syringe or the needle disturbing. And then she explained how pets and one-year-old children are identical, or animals even, not just pets. They are taken against their will for health care. They have zero idea how any procedure benefits them. They don't have the concept of time to anticipate the relief of fear, anxiety, and stress and pain, even if it's moments away. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, they can't flee the threat. So when COVID, give me an example. When COVID was here, we went by free will. We knew how it benefited it. We knew how long the procedure took. And if you got freaked out, you could leave, or you didn't have to get it to begin with if you didn't want to do it. And a pet is taken against their will, don't know how a vaccination benefits them, don't know that the whole, door to door is an hour, and actually in the exam room is 15 minutes, and the actual injection's a few seconds. And if they're scared, they can't flee the threat. So what happens, pets think they're going to be harmed or killed going to the vet. Pet parents think they're hurting their pets by trying to help it, as in taking it to the veterinarian. So increasingly, they don't want to take their pet to the vet when they should. And so we flipped it around and figured out, how do you take the pet out of petrified and put the treat into treatment? And worked with over 60 boarded behaviorists and animal handling experts and some of the icons in veterinary medicine, and figure out, how do you actually do it? How do you remove or reduce the triggers? How do you incentivize a pet to want to be examined or have procedures done? And in doing that, and I'm coming to the finish here, guys, First of all, it was just a matchup with the oath veterinarians or veterinary technicians take to prevent or relieve animal pain and suffering. We were causing it by what we were doing or not doing. It's better medicine. Steve Ettinger has served as our chief medical officer. Vital signs are more normal. Blood chemistries are more normal. The physical exam is more normal because they're not hiding pain and sensitivity. You don't get the immunosuppression that delays healing and recovery. Injuries plummet. Got studies that show a 50 to 70% decrease in injuries because you're reducing fear-based aggression. It's easier to attract, develop, and retain veterinarians and vet techs. Right now, the 43 veterinary schools in the United States, there's 12 new ones. Fear-free is mandatory at 4/5 of those schools. And the Association of Veterinary Tech Educators, which are the ones that 223 American Veterinary Medical Associated approved vet tech schools, fear-free is going to be mandatory by the end of next year. So when you're learning it in school, you're seeing it in the teaching hospitals, and you're doing it in community practice. You want to go someplace that's fear-free. It's very profitable. We got 3 years of white papers on like key practice indicators and also on net profit. And lastly, it's good for mental well-being. It makes practice fun. I think all of us, when you're young, you love pets and want them to love you back. And when you love them and they actually do love you back, when the dog's going to get a nail trim and actually drags the owner into the practice to get a nail trim, that's pretty good for the emotional well-being of the practice team.
Well, so my buddy Ivan, who happens to be right here with us, runs a bunch of vet clinics. They're not fear-free certified. My question is, how do you help the vet clinics? We've heard a bit of that in your answer, but what does this do to the bottom line? What does it do to the clinic besides improving, the culture and the other things that you've mentioned? And how do you start if somebody's out there listening to the podcast and they're like, wow, this all sounds really good?
Well, first of all, I'll give you some numbers here. It's NBA playoff times. There's 350,000 people are certified. There's an additional 120,000 people in the shelter world that have gone through a 5-hour online course. That's a commitment to go through a 5-hour online course. And then there's this year there'll be another 150 practices in the U.S. that become fear-free certified, 150 in France. It's in 113 countries. But first of all, the oath Ivan and I took to prevent and relieve animal pain and suffering, that's how fear-free started, but nobody really gets that excited about that part. I think we already feel like we're doing that. Better medicine. It is better medicine. That's hard to argue with. When let's say the vital signs are more normal and you've got an increased heart rate, that could be hyperthyroidism. The blood chemistries are more normal. Let's say you have an increased white blood cell count and you don't have the leukocyte shift from stress, infection, increased blood glucose, maybe pre-diabetic. And then pets that are, they're limping at home, you touch them, they cry out, you bring them in the vet clinic, you stick your finger right through them and nothing happens because they're in the fight or flight response. So it's better medicine. Injuries, dramatically fewer injuries. We are probably up here in northern Idaho where I live. I only live 7 miles from Canada, by the way, guys. It's equidistant from Bonners Ferry, Idaho, and Creston, British Columbia, where I'm sitting right now. We have people in our family that are hard rock miners, underground miners, people that are in the roofing business, and I'm in veterinary medicine. Those have incredibly high workers' compensation rates, being a roofer and also a logger, a logger, underground mining, and vet medicine. None of those others have almost 100% injury rate every year. In a veterinary clinic, almost everybody will be bitten or scratched or suffer a strain from a pet jumping or something. Right now, the rock in everybody's shoe, not the pebble, is staffing. And I'm telling you, it's coming. If you're not fear-free, you're going to be very hard to attract, develop, and retain people. Because Ivan and I learned restraint in vet school, harsh restraint. They're learning gentle control. It is very profitable. So we've got the documentation to show, increased compliance, increased frequency of visits, increased net income. And so do you want to come at it a better medicine? Do you want to come at it safer? Do you want to come at it you're going to make more money? Or do you want to come at it that people like working there more because your animals are just happier and clients are happier? Normally in sales, Sean, you love sales. I love sales. I'm one of those weird people. Like I'm on 6 pet organizations, and what I do, I'm a lousy board member, but I'm really good at raising money. I love to raise money. And normally when you go through sales, you got to go through benefits over price equals value, and you got to talk about what are the negatives. You go ahead and address the negatives. There is no negative. It's free to all veterinary students, faculty, and staff. We had 9,000 students sign up just last month. It's free to all veterinary all shelters and rescues. And if you're going to get started, there's a practice I won't name. It's in Toronto. And I gave a seminar for the entire group, and everybody was like, yeah, this is really great. But only one person, one veterinarian out of a multi-doctor practice was really moved. And he's like, I got this. He got that same fire I got. And then they started working, and then other team members are like, man, I want to work with him. And then other team members, and pretty soon other doctors, and pretty soon it swept over the practice. Because once you see a pet drag their owner in to have a procedure done, and you see the owner trying to drag him out of the hospital because they don't want to leave, then you're a believer.
I want to throw a curveball. So I've been ER vet for 20 plus years, and we're building urgent care. And how do you see it fit? Because I know there's a certain way that you conduct yourself in the exam room. How do you approach animals? And do you see that this could delay the frequency and the efficiency of the appointments implementing fear-free in the urgent care setting?
All right, Ivan, I love curveballs. I love tough questions. First of all, we're in discussions with VEG to bring fear-free to all VEG facilities. Tony Johnson, who you may know, he used to teach emergency and critical care at Purdue, and then he was the chief medical officer for VIN for many years. He gave a talk for fear-free called Where Seconds Count and Painful Memories Last a Lifetime. And it was about fear-free in emergency care. So can you give pre-visit medications in emergency care? No. Can you start the magic carpet ride of pheromones from carrier to car to clinic? No. But what you can do is when you take them into a room, you make sure that the noise levels are down. You're not moving as fast. You have dimmed the lights, whether it's dimmable LED lights or it's just a lamp that can cast thing. You have not only a non-slip surface, you have a warm surface. The entire team is wearing pheromones. Adaptil from the waist down, or Be Serene we actually use now, and the feline one from the waist up. There are diffusers in there, so the whole room, the doors have been closed, and there's multiple diffusers, so there's a lot of things. There's a special calming music playing. There's a Himalayan salt block and a water feature in there, which calms the pet parent down. And you have emotional isolation wards, and you use sedation. We have a saying, there's 12 boarded anesthesiologists on the Fear-Free Advisory Group too. So between the 60 plus boarded behaviorists and the boarded anesthesiologists, they say sedate early and often. Think of sedation as a first option, not a last resort. And Gary Landsberg, my Toronto friend and veterinary behaviorist that's boarded in the US and in Europe, says just give drugs a chance. So even in the clinics that aren't doing fear-free, they're not fear-free, they're doing fear-free because one, they're using gabapentin. We're the ones that started that. And they're also not putting every pet up on an exam table. Temple Grandin, who's part of Fear-Free, says animals' number one fear from birth is the fear of falling. And what did we do all those years? Lift them off their feet, put them on a slippery elevated table.
That makes sense. You mentioned one thing that there's something that I think read or heard somewhere. I think it was totally anecdotal, but I wanted to hear your opinion. So you mentioned about calming atmosphere for the owner. And do you believe in the placebo effect on pets?
Yes. There is a proven placebo effect on pets that comes from the owner. And so if the owner, there's some actually studies, if the pet is given a pill that the pet parent thinks is going to make it feel better, it's a placebo effect via the pet parent. By the way, we're a research-based company. I'm not a researcher. I don't like research. Every time I see an article in one of the magazines, I go right to the conclusion. I don't want to read all the stuff. But we have a scientific review panel. We have a chief scientific officer. And so a lot of this stuff we know. We know, for example, that pets like pastel colors. If it looks good on an Easter egg, it looks good to pets. Pets do not like white, especially. So white smock out. Not only does it fluoresce to them, but they've had, as Temple Grandin says, there's been some negative thing in the past that they took a picture of this big splotch of white. And about the only place in their life they see a big splotch of white was at a veterinary hospital with one or two people when some negative thing happened. You're seeing all these changes in hospital design. Talk about innovation. Literally no reception areas anymore. More exam rooms. No reception desk. Maybe a little almost like a little kiosk there that they can, somebody come in and get a prescription or some prescription diet or pick up their pet. Very particular attention spent to coefficients of friction of flooring. The flooring needs to have traction, and it cannot look shiny because pets think that's like ice. There's extra soundproofing in the exam rooms, no fluorescent lights, a certain spectrum of LED lights, certain colors of paint. And typically now they'll have an at least one indoor-outdoor exam room. So a pet can actually come in from the outside and never come in the clinic, or come in from the outside to go into the exam room because they've painted these pictures of negative. And one last thing, I've owned part or all of 8 hospitals in my life. I've owned and sold these hospitals, and we made every exam room look the same. It was the same cabinets, pretty much the same layout. Now in the new clinics, every exam room is different. Why is that? Because if a pet has a negative experience in one exam room, you put in the emotional medical record. Okay, this pet preferred to be seen in the owner's lap. This pet preferred Churu paste over any other treat. This pet did not like this particular person. It prefers females over males. And then it had a bad experience in exam room 3. You never put it in exam room 3 again. You put it in a room that looks different. So, I think it's kind of like state of the art meets state of the heart, high tech, high touch, out with stainless steel kennels. They're noisy, they're reflective, hard to visually block unless you put a towel over it like people do. Now Casco carriers are in. Glass, heated, LED lights, frosted bottoms so the pet thinks they're hiding. A good Canadian company that has Virox, we call it Rescue here, you call it something else there. It's accelerated hydrogen peroxide. Prevail in Canada.
That's right, yeah.
The only disinfectant used on the International Space Station. It dominates dentistry, dominates human hospitals, increasingly dominates shelters, increasingly dominates. Why? It breaks down into water and oxygen. But like Colonel Sanders' recipe, it has 11 herbs and spices. The damn thing kills everything except the pet, but there's no harsh chemical odor. Anybody that's still using bleach, those pets are nose blind within 60 seconds and their olfactory neurons don't regenerate for a week. So every instrument, my stethoscope, every time I'm done seeing a pet, it gets wiped down with accelerated hydrogen peroxide, wiped back across with the pheromone of the pet I'm seeing next. The otoscope, the cone, they're always in some kind of liquid, that is wiped back across with the pheromone, and the battery pack that's plugged into the wall that's never cleaned. That thing is wiped down with Rescue, wiped back across with a pheromone, and then you let the pet smell it. The pet in its mind smells my stethoscope and goes, damn, Mom, you got skinny, but that's you. So you use these tricks, and Fear Freeze, actually, I'm going to make a prediction on your show. This is the first time anybody's ever heard this. Okay, ready, Sean?
Ready, go.
I predict that within 5 years in every major grocery store chain in North America, you will have a section of food that is from animals that had a life worth living. So now it's organic, right? You're going to see it move to animals that had a life worth living. Temple Grandin, this icon, is working with us. And I don't know if you ever heard of the 5 freedoms of animals and the 5 domains. The 5 freedoms: freedom of hunger, freedom of thirst, freedom of pain. But those aren't anything positive. The 5 domains, and this came out of Europe, out of the UK, are the animal gets to experience pleasurable behaviors. So the chicken scratches, the cow For example, Chobani, has the world's largest yogurt plant down in southern Idaho, where I used to live. They have a special yogurt that comes from happy cows. And what are happy cows? Every 100 cows has a happy cow back scratching station for every 100 cows. It's like a car wash with no water. These cows will go in there, go back and line up like damn Starbucks or Timmy's. Timmy's probably. We have a Timmy's 16 miles away. They line up like Timmy's to go through these brushes. They milk themselves, robotic milkers. When they want to get milk, they go in. There is an utter massage, not just a cleaning, Ivan, not just cleaning manure and making sure there's no biosecurity there. They get a massage. It relaxes them. Well, guess what? They're going to give more milk. Then they hear an audible click. That says that I sweet feed, this oats and corn and molasses that's warm, has been dropped where I'm going to go get it. When they're walking from having their udder massage to that station where they're going to be milked, there is a sound of a mother cow calling to their calf. And that throughout a cow's life relaxes it. It gets more milk. Now it goes and gets its sweet feed. Now what happens? There is music specific to that cow that plays in its stall. So you can have what's called a double herringbone. You can have 20 cows, 10 on each side. Every cow can be listening to different music that's clinically proven to relax cows. And they keep testing using radio frequency tags and facial recognition to know what cow's there. They keep testing until they see what music the cow likes the best. Now, Ivan, I don't know how old you and Sean are. I'm 70. I'm not the target market for this. My kids are 38 and 33. That's the target market. Gen Z, Gen X, they want an animal to have what's called a life worth living. It's being increasingly legislated in Europe and California. Proposition 101, space requirements for all animals, just passed in Oregon and Washington. So you're going to see products from animals that had a life worth living that got to experience positive behaviors. God, I sound like a preacher. Amen.
Marty, I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
I was going to just ask you to step off the box for a second because I got one more question, then we got to wrap up because I really can't help but answer, and you might have already answered it for us in what you've said, but you've been in this arena of animal health and pet well-being, and it's very fascinating, a lot of the stuff that you shared with us. In the last 20 years, what's the one thing that's really knocked your socks off?
The thing that's knocked my socks off is more recent, and that's using machine learning to help veterinary medicine. Something that really motivated me recently that I watched, I'm a fan of documentaries, is Ken Burns' documentary on Ernest Hemingway. And I tell you a guest you guys got to have, Dr. Ed Cregan, past president of the Mayo Clinic, head of oncology at the Mayo Clinic for 30 years, quadruple boarded at the Mayo Clinic, oncology, internal medicine, palliative care, something else I don't remember. Best-selling author, How Not to Become My Patient. But why would you have him on your thing? He has prescribed, when he was still practicing, at the time, over 300 prescriptions for pets on a prescription pad. So by the time he ended, I'm not sure how many hundreds of pets he had prescribed. And that's linked at the human-animal health connection. So really, in ending, when you keep a pet healthy, you keep the human family healthy as well.
Amen. Well, we are out of time, as we usually are, and we have a couple questions that we ask at the very end. And the first one is, what book, TED Talk, video, or anything that inspired you recently can you recommend to our listeners?
So, Masters of the Air. There was a TV show on Apple about Masters, but I read the book. Those people have a dedication, training, and courage that was so inspirational to me.
And I'm going to get you to give us that guest recommendation one more time.
That's Dr. Ed Cregan. His book is How Not to Become My Patient. He blogs all the time for the Mayo Clinic, but past president, head of oncology, and the most prodigious fundraiser in Mayo history. How is that possible? Well, think about oncology and the patients he sees in oncology. He has a great chance to meet people in the last chapters of their life. The fascinating. Dad worked at the racetrack. Amazing guy.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.